and we don't know whether they can do that in 2 years, 3 years. They will have full control of the South China Sea. It will be very difficult to enter the South China Sea without being exposed to the anti-access air denial weapons available to the China plan. And the other thing is what we call the combination of the first island chain. The first island chain is a line from the Brunei area all the way to the Aleutians, passing through Japan. And then the second is the second island chain. What is the first island chain? The first island chain serves both as a defense line. This is the defense line in case there are hostile forces that would like to get close to the mainland of China. And at the same time, it is their objective to get out, also to break out of the first island chain in order to have a bigger control of the sea in the Pacific Ocean area, and then go to the second island chain. The second island chain goes all the way to Guam. If they succeed in doing this, they'll be depriving the US Navy of about 1/3 of the Pacific Ocean and push the the US Navy away from the Western Pacific area and include the Philippines as part of their area of control. So that will be a very strategically challenging situation for the Philippines and for Japan. Because if that happens, Japan is going to be very close and very accessible already to the naval and air forces of China. And that will be a very big strategic challenge for them. That is what we call the combination of the first island chain and then this, the second island chain. It is part of Chinese military doctrine. The People's Republic of China has the first island chain, and it must secure and disable from American bases, aircraft, and aircraft carrier groups in defending itself as well as in breaking out of the second island chain to have a bigger control of the Pacific Ocean. And you can see here Scarborough Shoal, very close to the island of Luzon. From there, they can project power that can affect many of our vital economic and military installations. What's happening in Scarborough Shoal right now? It used to be rich fishing grounds for hundreds of years for Filipino fishermen from the Zambales, Pangasinan area. But right now, the PLA Coast Guard and other maritime surveillance ships are harassing our fishermen there. And here's a video taken by fishermen, local fishermen there, and broadcast by a Japanese television station. So you're able to see that a very big Chinese Coast Guard ship harassing our fishing boats, our fishermen there. And when we had a rally sometime in July, one of the fishermen from the Zambales area delivered a speech and said that some of them have been killed already because of these attacks by water cannons by Chinese Coast Guard ships. And China is expected that by 2017 they'll be militarizing all these artificial islands. China is likely to begin the militarization of the artificial islands. They're doing it now in the disputed South China Sea and complete by 2017. Now, what we are seeing now is the convergence of the most powerful military powers of the world. We are seeing a new arms race. What we are seeing in the Middle East, in Europe, in Crimea, in the Black Sea, are just children's playground when compared to what could happen in the South China Sea because of the big boys that are here. The China Navy, for example, they have a Chinese aircraft carrier, the Liaoning. It's a converted Ukrainian aircraft carrier. They have submarines. They have this Jin-class nuclear-powered ballistic. When you say ballistic submarines, they have the ballistic missiles that can threaten Guam and maybe the west coast of the United States. 5 Xiang-class nuclear-powered fleet submarines, 12 Kilo-class submarines. Kilo-class submarines are made in Russia. And big destroyers, the Luyang class and the Luhai class destroyers. And a lot of fighter planes, Su-27, 75 of them. They're made in China fighter planes, the Shenyang J-11, 205, and then the J-10 multi-role fighters, 240 of them. But what's happening, because of their very aggressive stance, their very assertive stance in the South China Sea, East China Sea, and other parts of Asia, China, I've always been saying this, China has triggered a coalition against itself, which is normal in the history of mankind. You are the bully, then what will happen? There will be an alliance in order to counter the bully. Of course, we have the first bully, the United States of America. The Indo-Pacific security complex changed radically with a series of strong statements and warnings from the USA. This started in May with the statement from Secretary Carter, the newly installed at that time Secretary of Defense. He said, first, we want a peaceful resolution of all disputes, referring to the South China Sea disputes. To that end, there should be an immediate and lasting halt to land reclamation by all claimants. This was in May, but so far this has been ignored. We also oppose any further militarization of disputed features, stressing that U.S. forces will continue entering what he called international waters and airspace in the region. And he stressed this during the turnover ceremony of the Pacific Command. He said, Secretary Carter said, we will remain the principal security power in the Asia-Pacific for decades to come. There should be no mistake. The United States will fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows, as we all do around the world. That was the statement that they made in May, and that to me changed the security complexion overnight in the South China Sea area. And they started by challenging China with the deployment, the patrol of a P-8 Poseidon. A P-8 Poseidon was their choice of weapon, so to speak, in order to challenge China in that area. And of course, we all know that the Poseidon is not just a surveillance plane, it has the capability also to defend itself and even attack Navy ships in the area, including submarines. It has enough weapons to be able to do that. And there's the United States Navy, and all of a sudden they started projecting a brand new, well, this is expected to be an addition to the US Navy, the somewhat a huge destroyer. They call this a destroyer, very modern, different looking kind of hull here. $7 billion, imagine $7 billion for one destroyer, and they started showing what it can do. It has the stealth capability on its own, alone. It can go close to a coastal area and destroy a city, working alone. It is a one-man wrecking team. And of course, the most significant development, and this has started about 2-3 years ago, the U.S. strategic pivot to Asia Pacific. The Asia pivot into reality, and you can see what is the pivot all about. Of course, they have forces in South Korea, they have forces in Japan, they're starting to engage Vietnam, they have forces in Taiwan, in the Philippines. We already signed the EDCA, but this is being deliberated in Japan in the Supreme Court. They have 2,500 Marines in northern Australia for quicker response. And in Singapore, they have the LCS, the littoral combat ships are stationed there in order to interdict the Malacca Strait, and they're talking with Thailand. And their message is China should tread carefully in the South China Sea. They came out with the U.S. Asia-Pacific Maritime Security Strategy. They came out just last month, and I'd like to read very quickly what they're talking about here. The document rejects Chinese sovereignty claims over the disputed islands in the South China Sea, asserts that the U.S. will enhance a force posture and persistent presence in the region while building the capacity of allies, like the U.S. for example, and partners, and explicitly supports India's Act East policy as a strategic convergence with the U.S., rebalance, embracing India as a net provider of security in the Indian Ocean region and beyond. So India is part of the equation. I'll talk about that some more later. They issued a warning to China with more military humanitarian exercises in the South China Sea. Japan is there, and of course Japan's Defense Minister Nakatani issued strong statements also. And the situation in the South China Sea has an impact on our national security. It's far from them, but to them it has an impact on their national security, and we are aware that we will need to consider our response. And what was their response? Of course, they're talking of possible naval patrols in the South China Sea. But the biggest response that they have is the defense reform through first the bills that are submitted in the Diet, and this has been implemented. This has been approved already by the Diet.